Hello everybody, it's me, Nikki, and today I'm here with a Let's Talk About. And today I would like to talk about Emily Dickinson. I've got her book all the way down here. This is my collected poems of Emily Dickinson. It is the Barnes & Noble's edition. I'm sure there are many other editions. This is just the one I got. Does it say? It doesn't say how many poems there are here. So I know I have some Wikipedia pages open if I can find it. Wow, she has 1,775. That's a lot of poems, considering she only lived, I don't know how to do that math. She was 56? I mean, that's a lot of poems. So anyway, I love Emily Dickinson. She's like my idol. I love her a lot. So she was born in 1830 and died in 1886. I want to say Amherst, Massachusetts. I think even before, even when she was young, she was pretty eccentric, but it was either because she was just like a nice person, or her family wasn't rich, they were just well established, so I think everybody was just sort of like, that's okay, that's just Emily. She went to a very good school at the time and she learned everything. And I think that is where she got her anxiety about death. I think I read that a friend of hers at the time got something and died. So, and then even when she was later, she was always like, oh God, they're all going to die, all my family. And then as she got older, I want to say I remember that there was an idea of her being a teacher, because that's obviously why women went to school, but then she was like, no, and moved back home. I'm not sure if she was agoraphobic. At some point she didn't leave the house, and then at a later point she didn't even leave her bedroom. She wore all white as she got older. She didn't really talk to people outside of her family except in letters. And I even read somewhere that she used to have a basket out of her window, and then kids would put groceries in and she would wheel it up. And I think there's only one known photo of her, maybe two. If you Google her and go to Wikipedia, there's that picture. And so there may be a second one, but nobody's 100% sure. So it's at least that one. So that's fun. She was also a really well-known botanist, which I didn't know about. She knew all about plants. In her poems you can tell as well. And she was religious, but not super. I don't think she was super religious, but she was still yeah, that this is cool. And I tend to group her in with Edgar Allan Poe and other Gothic writers. And she probably wasn't necessarily Gothic, maybe because she wrote about death. But I think a lot of people in the 1800s were just obsessed with death, because there was everything. There was typhoid. What was TB, tuberculosis, which every female heroine had and died from. So they were just all sort of like obsessed with it. And I don't know, I guess she's gothic. I would put her there. Also, like, it's East Coast Massachusetts, and I think Edgar Allan Poe, well, he was from Baltimore, that's still on the East Coast, but there's sort of like that creepy vibe to it. So yeah. She wrote a lot of poems, obviously, over 1,000, over 1,700. And some of them were published, but nobody quite got it because of her writing style. And I think at the time, editors, like even men who were her friends that were editors, because there were no female editors, they edited it, and she was like, oh, no. So she basically just wrote them and shared them with her friends. There's even I think there's a couple of books about her letters, and even those are like poems. The same punctuation things are there. And then she passed away, sadly, after like everybody else passed away in her family. Not everybody, but like what she was so afraid of. Where is it? Let's see. Her mother died in 1882. She had like a nephew die. Where was it? Yes, a nephew die of typhoid fever the next year. And she just like, you know, everybody was like dying. And so she passed away. I don't think they know why. She said, it just says she was ill and then she died. So who knows why she died. She was 55. They her as Bright's disease, apparently. Oh, that's the kidney thing, huh? Yeah, that happened a lot because of something about the water, I think. And then she was buried. And her family took care of that, but then they also feuded over her work after her death. Her sister did burn letters because Emily asked her to. But she saw that her poems were good. And she tried to do something, but then their brother, his mistress, was fighting with Emily's sister, Lavinia. Her name was Mabel Todd, the mistress, and Mabel Todd Loomis. And they basically like fought over it, but somehow Mabel Todd got them, and they edited it. She specifically edited it for the, like, Emily liked to capitalize things, and she would uncapitalize them, and they would move the dashes and make them periods. And you're just like, well, that defeats the purpose of the work. But now they have proper collections because somebody found the originals and were like, well, yeah. She really liked this dash. Let me see if that's going to show up. Oh, I've got too many things open. She really liked that dash. I think they call it an M dash. She really liked that. And she wouldn't always she liked to capitalize things, like I said, that didn't necessarily were capitalized in common things, which is why nobody really got her poetry. But I always feel poetry is subjective anyway. Like, some people might not like this, but I do. And then, of course, this has probably come out more recently, she sent 300 plus letters to her sister-in-law, to her brother's wife, Susan, I believe. I think they called her Sue, but it was Susan. Let me see. I think it was Susan, but I want to find it. Yes, Susan Gilbert Dickinson. And they were very romantic. Not all of them, but a lot of them were. So, she's on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, although they didn't really have words for that, besides homophobic ones. But she maybe had like another crush on another woman, but she didn't, as far as anybody knows, she didn't kiss or have sex with anybody. She might have had crushes on older men. They were usually her writing friends, but that could have been a retcon by Mabel Todd. So we're not 100% sure, but she never got married, so I don't think she did anything with anyone. I personally lean towards her being like asexual, but with like leanings towards ladies, obviously. But that's just my interpretation. She definitely was in love with Susan. Which was fine because Susan loved her and Emily's brother loved Mabel. And then I did skip a part. At some point she just started wearing white. Did I mention that? Like she had a dog die, and that was around 1867. She did not leave her house until it was necessary, it says here. And she wouldn't even talk to visitors unless like there was a door between them. She was rarely seen, and when she was, it says she was clothed in white. Which is weird because there's that picture of her and she's in like a black dress. So yeah. Yeah, they just thought she was sort of like a bit of a weirdo, but they were like, meh, who cares, really? Because the Dickinsons, I feel like, had been in that area for a very long time. Even Mabel Todd, it says, she never met Emily, and then she edited her fucking poems. Like, what a bitch. And there's, I'm maybe like, two of her poems are probably studied the most. Because I could not stop for death, I'm nobody, who are you, but there's also hope is the thing with feathers, there's a certain slant of light. She wrote a lot of poems about death, but she also wrote poems about flowers, like I said, because she knew about them. What else do they have it here? I think she wrote about her family, but not like as individuals, but as like a collective. She says she wrote about love. It's right here. Time and Eternity and The Single Hound. I don't know what those poems are about. She wrote about Susan. I don't know if she wrote about... I think she wrote about Susan in the letters to Susan, not as like specifically to be published. I think she wrote about some of her friends, like her male editor friends. But yeah, she was prolific as fuck. And I think she only had maybe like 4 or 5 poems published in her lifetime. She's sort of like I want to say Vincent van Gogh, but I think he had some paintings shown off in his lifetime, but again, no, everybody was sort of like, well, he's weird. but you know, she was nice and kind, and I she loved her the children of the area, especially her nieces and nephews. So yeah, you know, she was just cool. She's just cool to me. And just her writing style was so interesting. Like, where was it? I'm nobody, who are you? You know, and then she goes, are you, big dash, nobody, dash, two. You know, frog is capitalized, somebody, bog, you know, and they're not like at the beginning of the sentence. I don't know. It's like a really short poem, but it tells you a lot. Because it tells you a lot about her, because she didn't want to be, it sounds like she didn't want to be public, like a frog, to tell one's name, the livelong June, to an admiring bog. She didn't want to do that. She just sort of wanted to like hold up with perhaps another nobody and just sort of do her own thing. And her family seemed to be generally accepting of it. I think there's that TV show, and I read in it that her dad in the TV show was trying to get her to marry, and I don't think her dad ever pressured her. He was just like, do what you want. And then there's a certain slant of light, was about death, but also like cathedrals, and she just was able to mix all of these things together. And then I think because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves, and immortality was probably one of her more famous poems. I feel like everybody studies that in school, and it just ends with one of those big dashes, and you're just like, so it feels like it doesn't really end, which is great because the last word is eternity, big dash, and you're like, ooh, you know. So I don't know why that stupid lady did that. Let's see. I can't believe I talked about her for 17 minutes. I didn't think I could. But yeah, and you know, some of her poems are like 4 lines, and then some of them are not 4 lines, and it's just like, it's pretty inspiring to be like, oh, she never left her room. She was like, didn't talk to anybody, and she just wrote over 1,700 poems. So yeah, that's Emily Dickinson. Do you like her? Do you love her like I do? Or are you just sort of like ambivalent about her? Let me know in the comments. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're having a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.